This episode is brought to you by our friends at BetterMan. BetterMan is helping men everywhere have a biblical vision of manhood, one that's rooted and grounded in God's timeless word. You can check them out at betterman.com. That is betterman.com. Food, glorious food, sweet, creamy custards.
You're just making us step now.
I couldn't remember the rest of the words. But then the next line is food, glorious food.
What is that from?
Cups filled up with mustard. That's not it either. But the first and the third line are the lines.
From what?
It's from Oliver.
Oh, is it?
It is.
Oh, then you were in Oliver. Did you guys see that post on Instagram?
No?
Okay.
This is a trend now of this season. We're talking about
your acting career.
That's
as
right.
a junior hire.
Hey, I was in 10th grade.
Oh,
welcome back to Clearly. Good to see you guys. Kelly, explain the season briefly, and then stop explaining so we can say other things.
This whole season is about how God is the most important person in the universe in our lives. We are meant to be dethroned from the center of our own lives. We are not the main character of our own lives. God is. He's the sun and the center of our universe. And that has major implications, that God is more important than us on all areas of life.
Yeah.
And so we are now exploring that.
That's right. It's not just theological stuff. This matters to like what you do today on your car ride, how you interact with your family, how you handle your job. Last week, we talked about employment, job, career, work. How does God being at the center impact, change how I approach my job, my desire for a job, my disgruntledness at my job? We talked about that this week and last week. And this week, we're talking about food. Food, glorious food. And I'm excited about this topic because it's oft not talked about, Kelly.
At least not in this way.
No.
I mean,
it's actually talked about a ton.
Shelves are all covered with, you can find all sorts of things about food out there.
I disagree with 94% of it. But I think we need to have more conversations in the Christian community about our relationship to food and how our relationship to the Lord should impact and interact with that relationship. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but we all eat. It's a thing that we all do. And it is something God's baked into the rhythms of humanity. Like it's something we have to confront every day. Yep. And it's theological in nature.
It is.
And I don't think people think that way.
No.
And I think maybe one other thing to say, and this will maybe get us into our stories, is we Kelly and I have had our own journeys with this topic that have really brought us to some, I think, helpful and interesting conclusions on the other side of it that we think are biblical and we want to share with you. Some of you know my story, but I grew up dealing with obesity my whole life, from childhood, through my teens into college. And then on the other side of that, today I've lost almost 100 pounds. Just a very different person than I was then. And I find myself in conversation all the time with people about like how that journey happened, what changed, those types of things. And the answer I give them is never what they expect and pretty much never what they want. But it is something that has so transformed how I understand like food, my relationship to it, eating, all of that. And you've had your own journey with.
Yeah. I was not overweight as a child, but food always had a hold on me. I have very early memories of sneaking into the pantry at home and whatever it was, whether it was Cheetos or Oreos. And, I knew the kitchen was closed.
You were a good 90s kid. It was just, if it was dusted with spray cheese or sugar, you ate it. That's right.
I still love it, to be honest. But I have early memories of I couldn't stop thinking about food. And it's already past dinner time. I'm supposed to be in bed, but I'm sneaking downstairs. I'm sneaking food. I'm putting it under my shirt, to try and carry it up to my room. Like I have a lot of memories of that. And yet.
Can I tell my sneaking food?
Yes, because it's epic.
When I was in junior high, this was in my rotund days, me and my buddy Drew would come to my house. My mom would be in the bedroom or something. She told us, don't hang out in the pantry. Don't hang out in the kitchen because you just eat too much. And so we knew we couldn't stay downstairs. So we went into the kitchen and we opened the freezer real quick. The freezer.
Freezer.
And then we dug our hands into these boxes of frozen cheese sticks, mozzarella sticks, and we stuffed our pant pockets full of frozen mozzarella sticks. And then we rushed upstairs. And then we spent the next 10 minutes thawing mozzarella sticks with our breath. And then eating these limp, lukewarm mozzarella sticks. And it was a highlight of my childhood, I gotta say. I'm not proud of it, but would I do it again? I'd pray about it. I'd pray and see if the Lord would want me to do it again. I'll tell you that much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, okay. I think that's a hilarious story. I appreciate you sharing. I've heard that many times. Great. But, okay, if I can turn it a little more sober, okay?
Oh, boy.
I know. While I have some of those really funny memories in childhood of sneaking food, I also feel like my the grip that food had on me began to carry shame with it. And I think that's very common. So if you're listening to that and feeling that, my experience with other women I talk to, at least, is that's very normal. Because I also didn't just struggle with, I feel like I tell people I struggled with these twin sins of not just gluttony, overeating, but vanity as well. Like I was going to find a way to eat what I want to eat and manage that in such a way that I could look the way I wanted to look. None of that is commendable, and all of it is sinful for what it's worth. Just naming it is what it is. So like I would figure out, this is I'm going to laugh about it, but honestly, it has carried in the past a lot of shame for me. Oh, pickles have very little calories. Popcorn has very little calories. Oh, I could like eat a lot of that and not gain a lot of weight, right? So there was this I want to be eating all the time. Mm-hmm. Because food, it has this gravitational pull in my life. I feel like an addiction to it. And yet I'm having to find ways to circumvent what I don't want it to do to me. And again, unhealthy, not right. And so while both of our stories are different in some ways, we both felt like
the fact that food was so controlling in our life was the common theme. And honestly, guys, you're probably listening to this and maybe it doesn't take long to see that our culture, that food is so controlling in our culture, in different extremes, but like, just like, I mean, dude, how many friends do you have? Maybe you're this person, like all of a sudden, like we're all scientists about like, and nutrient, like we all know everything about the gut health, amino acid, globule, gut, it's just what is going on? How are we all, I mean, I know so many folks that like, we live and die by this like new code book of like, and a code book that changes every day about what to eat, what not to eat. We're trying to, so you got that like hyper healthy culture thing going. And then you have the just go for it culture and it doesn't matter at all. And just self-indulgence, the gluttony thing and all that. And I think the common thread is all of that. We're still being controlled, aren't we? Like in our stories, in our culture's story, food still seems to be on the throne in some ways. And so we were like, well, this whole season's about God being on the throne. So how can maybe we can talk about like how to get God back on the throne in the way we think about our eating and interacting with food. Right. And so we want to just spend some time like unpacking with you like what we've learned along the way, like how have we seen some change and growth? Not that we've arrived or anything, but God has done some really great things in us and it's come through his word.
Yeah. Can I share the kind of one big turning point for me?
Yeah.
We both came across a Bible study, very gospel, like it was about how does the good news of Jesus interact with food and eating. It was like exactly what I needed. And the very first lesson in this Bible study, I will never forget it, was based around 1 Corinthians 10:31. You're probably familiar with it. Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And it addressed this thing in me. And I remember finishing that episode. I remember finishing that lesson and going, wow, I eat what I want to eat when I want to eat it. And I exercise self-control for almost no other reason but for myself. I need to stop eating because I don't want to feel bad physically. I don't want to look bad. It's all me. Everything I do in my eating is all about me. And then this whole lesson was about you are called to eat not for you, but for the Lord and for his glory. And your eating and drinking ought to center around him. And it was like, oh my gosh, I've never considered that. As in we were married at the time, so in my early 20s.
I had this similar moment. Kelly, as it is in so often in our marriage, goes before me and reads book X or does Bible study Y, and then she says, "Hey, you should do it."
Like, you should really do this. It's really good.
I promise I'm the leader of our marriage, but I do it vicariously through my wife leading me. Wow. Anyways, so I did this Bible study. Mm-hmm. And I had a similar moment. It was the first moment, and now I'm in my 20s at this point.
Mm-hmm. And you had lost a lot of weight too.
I had lost some weight, but wasn't exactly even sure how it all happened. But I hadn't had this thought, and this Bible study introduced this thought. Hey, what if there's a morality to the way you eat? Mm-hmm. Like, what if there's a way you eat that could actually be sinful? What if your issue with food is actually sin? Mm-hmm. I know maybe you're like, yeah, I know that gluttony is a thing in the Bible or whatever, but I had not, and I've been walking with Jesus for over a decade. I'd not really connected that, like, hey, maybe I'm not just big boned. maybe it's not just like, man, I don't know, like weight stays on me more than other people, and just it is what it is. What if I considered for like 1 second that I might be sinning? Mm-hmm. If that chastened me and kind of woke me up and introduced to me some thoughts and ways of thinking about food from the scripture that like totally sent me on a new path. And so we thought, well, let's just get on the podcast and talk about some of that.
You would say that was a really freeing thought.
I would say it's the most freeing thought I've had about food has been like, oh, this is a spiritual issue, a moral issue, right, as much or more than it is a nutritional issue, scientific issue, right? Which is how our culture talks about it,
right? We very rarely talk about it as a moral issue, and it is liberating. That's very counterintuitive, but it immediately takes our eating issues out of this thing we should correct one day, which is, again, how the culture talks about it. New Year's resolution, right? I should get in control of this part of my life, get healthier, all of that. And puts it, and sin is relational. It puts it in a very relational language with God, that my misuse of God's gift of food is a sin against him that harms my relationship with him. And that is what's liberating, because if we do have the Spirit of God in us, then there is this internal drive to keep our relationship with him, to be in right relationship with him, right? And so now all of a sudden there's a stronger motivation to change than just, I should do that. Maybe I should get in control of this. It's like, no, this is about him. It's not about me. And it's a stronger gravitational pull. I find it to be really freeing too. And I say that because I don't know, there are so many situations that we can't speak to. We don't even have time. So I'm sure there's people listening that are going, those other unique situations do apply to me, and they probably do. But for many of us, most of us, we need to consider this part of food, that there is a morality about food, and it's not that there are good foods and bad foods out there for us, right? It's that there is a way to eat that is a sin against the Lord.
Yeah. If that's a new thought for you, welcome to Being Offended 101. We are happy to teach this course with you, and we're going to hold your hand through the whole thing.
Offensive.
It is offensive, but at least you can hear.
Send
it.
us all the questions.
At least you're hearing it from a person and from people who have like been in the trenches doing it. Like I've been obese like half of my life, and then the other half I wasn't. And the thing that made the difference was not the thing our culture says. So if only for that reason, I think it's worth hearing us out. This episode is brought to you by our friends at BetterMan. What is the most trusted voice in the life of a man today? It's BetterMan. BetterMan is more than a resource, it's a movement. Everyone agrees that when men are better, the world is better. BetterMan, it gives men the language and the license they need to be all that God has called them to be. When men are at their best, listen, marriages thrive, children are blessed, the church is strengthened, the world changes. So let's change the world. Check them out today at betterman.com. That's betterman.com. Here's the question of the day. How do we eat to the glory of God? So if 1 Corinthians 10:31 is the verse, we eat to the glory of God, how do we do that? We just want to give you a few things that have helped us along the way that have really been total game changers for us, and it's all from God's word. So the first thing we would say, we're trying to find like helpful ways to phrase it. This is the best we could come up with. If you got something better, email us. The first thing we would say is like this: eat like a satisfied person. Eat like a satisfied person. Where do you start? This is a universe of things. Here's where I'll start. John 6:35 changed my life. You guys probably are familiar with it. Very popular verse. It's Jesus feeding the 5,000 and that whole thing's going down. And they're like, hey, can you do this for us like all the time? We are starving. And he's now changing their paradigm. He did this whole thing to actually talk to them about himself, not food. They're like, Lord, always give us this bread. And then you remember what he says in John 6:35? He goes like this. Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. So Jesus looked at them and he basically said this: the food you just ate is actually meant to preach a sermon to you. And the sermon is about me. Jesus came and said, food was invented so it would say something about me. And what it's meant to say is, when you enjoy a good meal, here's the sermon you're hearing. This is what the Savior of the world is like. This is what he's like. He's like good bread. He's like a warm meal for you. He satisfies you. And it's that thought that revolutionized for me how I was navigating food.
Right. Well, and it actually should cause you to enjoy food more, I think, to savor it more, because it is a sermon being preached to you. Like, I think about when we go on dates, bread is like the best part of the meal. Come on now, is good bread. And there's so many times that we do sit down for a meal together. And if the bread's real good, because, we love good bread. It's like, oh, this bread is so good. Isn't Jesus is so like good bread. It's normal. It's not fancy. Everybody has it, but it's always the best part of the meal. Like, so we'll start a conversation about it, but then we'll talk about it. They'll talk about how creative God made humans that could make all these different varieties of things. The fact that food exists to preach to you should motivate you to savor it more appropriately and let it lead you to the right place.
That's right. So eating like a satisfied person means when we approach food, we need to come to it for it to do what it was meant to do for us, which is keep us alive. Yeah. And then to tell us about the one who's meant to keep our soul alive. And the problem that I discovered, and when I was confronted with this verse, what I realized is, I'm not eating like a satisfied person. I'm coming to food, not thinking it's preaching a sermon. I'm thinking that the food is the actual satisfier, not the Savior. Food says the Savior is the satisfier. That's what food says. But what I've been doing my whole life is I've been coming to food and I've been going, oh, you're the satisfier.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this Bible study we did, and we'll put it in the show notes for you to take a look at. It gave me new language to talk about it. It asked the question at one point, are you eating for physical hunger or soul hunger? Mm-hmm. And for me, that was
what a challenge.
super convicting, because it was like, dang, I don't know if I've ever eaten for physical hunger.
Right.
I feel like, and by soul hunger, they meant, are you eating for any other reason than I'm hungry? Mm-hmm. And if so, you need to be asking yourself some questions right now. Like, why do I think that this bag of chips is going to take away my anxiety about the test I've got to take at noon? What am I projecting onto this, soda or this, whatever meal that I think it can do for me what only Jesus promises to do for me? Mm-hmm. Only Jesus can deal with my fear, my boredom, my anxiety, my longings. Only Jesus can and is meant to deal with that. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to these inanimate objects and I'm saying, no, you be my Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so it gave me a chance to go, oh, okay, I'm not eating like a satisfied person. I'm not eating like my soul is satisfied in Jesus. I need to pause from this meal, move away from it. And I actually need to go sit with the Lord and go, why am I so desperate for this food right now? Oh, it's because I think it will make me happy in a lasting way, but food just can't do that. Jesus, only you make me. I've had so many times in green rooms, like where they got the whole spread out. I've had to like leave the room and go into a smaller room and just sit by myself with my Bible and read this verse again and go, okay, that cookie tray, it is not my satisfier. It's good. I like cookies, but like it can't do what the bread of life can do.
Yeah. Which is why a long time ago, I put on a note card in our pantry this little phrase to remind me, because I'm always at home. That's a challenge. For stay-at-home moms, I'm just saying it's a real challenge because you're always, or if you work from home, right? You're always around your pantry. I don't know. Is anybody else? Just me? Okay. I find myself from just the day being stressful, that's my way to give myself a break, right? To like, it's like a type of rest or something. I'm going to go get myself a snack. I'm not hungry, whatever. And I walk in and out of my pantry so much because I walk in and I'm looking for something to eat. I'm like, okay, am I actually hungry right now? No, I'm stressed out and I need to take a pause and talk to Jesus. But I put this little note card in our pantry to remind myself. It says, eat and drink like Jesus is really satisfying. Like I want to be a person that my kids watch and go, is Jesus truly the one who can satisfy those things? Am I going to food for those things? Or am I going to the Lord? Or do they see me going, yeah, we've had a full morning and we haven't eaten since breakfast and our tummies are rumbling and I am hungry. Like, let's make a good meal. And both hunger and the fulfillment of that hunger are preaching a sermon that we're meant to experience. But there are times that we tend to go to food for things that it's not. And I need those reminders. And often don't follow through with them. So, I mean, this is an area of life that I think is a constant place that we are stumbling, but yet have spent over time, more and more time in victory because when there's a stumble, it's like, all right, you know how many times I've been on my knees in my kitchen? Jesus, I did not need to eat that. Yeah. I don't want to come to you because I know when I talk to you about this thing, it's going to bring up all sorts of other things I got to talk to you about. And I've been putting that off. And, it's like all that comes up in my prayer life. And it's like, exactly, that's what he wanted. He wanted me to come to him and start dealing with that. I was avoiding him with food, so it's just, but having that moment with him resets you and gives you liberty. Repentance really is freedom and sets you on a course to now walk in that freedom and stay in dependence with him.
That's right.
That's what it means to eat like a satisfied person, that I'm feeding my soul on Jesus as I should and letting food just be the picture, the shadow. Colossians 2 says it that way, that food and drink, it calls it a shadow of things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. I want to eat in such a way that I treat food like the shadow that it is and Christ like the substance that he is, and that I don't flip that. Treat food like the substance and Christ like this shadow that I can take or leave. No, food is the shadow. He's the substance. Am I living like that's true?
Yeah, that's right. And so there's a couple ways to interact with food as a satisfied person. You can go to it and eat it, right? And like you said, let it preach the sermon to you. Enjoy the heck out of the thing, and then do what we do all the time, which is look at each other and go, Jesus is better than this. That's amazing.
It's amazing.
And we say that so often.
Great food should make you say, can you believe God is this good and better?
That's right. So you eat the shadow, and you preach to yourself, oh, the substance. I think of how good the substance is in light of this, right? That's one way that we come to food as a satisfied person. And the other way is to not eat.
To stop eating
the shadow, right? So this is like the category of fasting, which I don't know, if you guys...
Well, I would say fasting and even stopping eating.
That's right. Yes, that's one of them. Fasting, just cutting yourself off, after you've eaten, those types of things. All of those moments are, I love the way Piper talked about it in his book on fasting, and that's why I made me think of it. But he has this quote in his book, The Hunger for God, where he says, when we eat, we taste the emblem of our heavenly food. So the emblem is the food. The heavenly food is Jesus. When we eat, we taste the emblem of our heavenly food, the bread of life. And when we fast, we say, I love the reality above the emblem. That's what fasting is. It's saying, I'm actually going to go without the shadow because I love the substance the most, and I want to spend time with the substance, Jesus Himself, and so eating and not eating can be done in a way that says, no, Jesus really is the bread of life, and for us that has been such a helpful way to come to me. And look, there's 5 million ways we're not perfect in this, but we're saying that in general, this is how we've been trying to approach food over the past decade and a half, 2 decades, and it's changed us. Like it's been awesome to watch.
To put Jesus right in the center of our eating and our drinking. And if I can say one other thing.
You can't. You know what? You can. Go ahead.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah, you bet.
In light of food being a sermon that is being preached to us, this is one thing I tell women that I know who are struggling with eating disorders and a temptation to fast in an unhealthy way, to not eat. Eating food is preaching to you. It is telling you something. It is actually healthy and good for you. It's one of the reasons you should eat. So if you have that in your history and in your background, just a fear of food or like really unhealthy calorie counting that's just not healthy, this is a reason to eat, even if it scares you. Eat because it's preaching a sermon to you, to your soul, that Jesus is that good. He's good. He's not to be feared. And so it's why we take the Lord's Supper, why we take communion, right? Yeah. We're actually eating and drinking something physically because it's telling us something. God knows that we need these physical, tangible reminders of the intangible realities we can't yet see or feel yet. And food is one of those things. Right. And so if that's you, if you're on that end of the spectrum, this is a reason for you to go that, no, you actually are commanded to do this. To, yes, feel hunger, but also feel the satisfaction of fullness after a meal and to think of Jesus.
That's right.
So,
okay, number 2 then. Yeah?
Yep.
How else are we to eat to the glory of God? You want to get this one?
Yeah.
This guy right here.
So we don't just eat like a satisfied person. We eat like a dying person.
Hey.
So fun.
Welcome to Clearly.
Here's what I mean by that. The cultural, one of the cultural messages that we're hearing all the time right now is eat so that you don't die. I mean, that's summing it up.
There's literally a book
that
just came out.
I have taken a picture of the book. Eat to not die.
He's got some bad news coming for him.
It's this idea that we should eat in such a way to make our life the longest it can possibly be, right? That we eat in such a way that we are keeping our bodies in tip-top shape and that we're avoiding anything that could cause any shortening of our lifespan. All of our eating is all about how do I live the longest life possible, which sounds full of wisdom. And maybe there's parts of it that are wise, and we'll talk about it. But the reality is you're going to die unless Jesus comes back. And the reason you're going to die is not because you ate something bad. It's because you, like me, are a sinner. And the consequence for sin is death. Now, Jesus has defeated death ultimately in the cross and will come back one day to fully take care of the death we still see on this earth. But sin is what is connected to death, not what we eat. And what I am trying to tell myself when I feel that temptation, that fear. I mean, there's so much fear culturally about food, right? Don't eat this, don't eat this. This could cause cancer, and this could cause this thing. We're being told, eat to have a long life. Again, me at the center. How do I make my life the longest is the motivation there. How do I put God back at the center? I don't want to eat to live a long life. I want to eat to live a fruitful life for my King. Here's what I mean by that. I think it is good to eat in such a way that your body is in the best condition
Healthy, sure.
you can have it in. Why? Not for you, but so that you are able-bodied and able to serve the Lord wherever he sends you, that you are in shape to be able to help those around you, to help those in need, to serve people around you. Eat to live a fruitful life, not a long one. Because the reality is, in a lot of parts of the world, when you become a Christian, you shorten your lifespan. It is dangerous to be a Christian. It always has been. And so to follow Jesus is not good for your well-being physically. And so
no matter how much kale you consume, just for what it's worth.
It's good to eat with death in view. And what I mean by that is a reminder that is coming. And so I don't eat so that I can totally avoid that. I eat so that I am able-bodied as long as God gives me breath to serve others so that they can know the news they need to hear because they're also dying, which is that Jesus has defeated death and offers that to them in the gospel.
That's right. What we're trying to say is this truth, like having your death in view, it should make us not over-obsess about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think our culture tells us you literally have to like go get your doctorate in like nutrition health,
Mm-hmm.
like to make it, and we're just saying, I just don't buy that, man. The health nut and the obese guy, they both wind up in the same
Mm-hmm.
grave.
Right.
It's not maybe the same grave. Maybe
No.
they're different graves, but the same
Mm-hmm.
general location, right? 6 feet under. And man, isn't it just relieving to go, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, that means I'm going to know God is in charge of my fate. I'm going to steward my body
Mm-hmm.
to be fruitful
best as I can.
for ministry.
Mm-hmm.
I have that in mind. I sure would like to be able-bodied in, if God gives me 70, 80, 90 years, that'd be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But the name of the game is fruitfulness, not longevity.
Mm-hmm.
And just recognizing, and you know what? Some of the healthiest people I know still got cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the healthiest people I know it's just like, okay.
Right.
So I'm not going to become a scientist.
Right.
I'm just going to be faithful and a good steward.
It's in some ways it's not letting health be the gravitational center of your life, right? And letting Jesus be that. Doesn't mean be unhealthy, right? We know that. But it means I'm not living to be the healthiest version of myself humanly possible. Because if I wanted to do that, it would take all my time. I would have no time to read the word and tell my neighbors about Jesus because I'd have 40 more things to research as we find out new science about all these things. It's just, I don't want to live my life for that. I need to live my life for the one I'm called to. And so as much as it is within my power to steward my body, to be able and ready to serve him and those he puts around me, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But with death in view, I can keep Jesus.
So eat like a dying person.
And then one more.
One more
for you.
Eat like a missionary. If you were listening last week, we kind of ended on a similar note with work, that we are working in such a way that we rightly picture Jesus to a world that needs to see him. We tell the truth about him in our lack of grumbling and our hard work, all of those things that communicate something to people. And the same is actually true in our eating. There's a number of ways to think about this, but we want to eat in a way or engage with meals, with food, with all that in such a way that it will ultimately result in people believing true things about our God, desiring to know our God. Man, that is the goal. So think about 1 Corinthians 10:27. If one of the unbelievers invites you to dinner and you are disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any question on the ground of conscience. What is he saying there? He's saying if you're a guest at somebody's house, eat the food, man.
An unbeliever specifically.
An unbeliever.
Do you hear that? Someone who doesn't know Jesus invites you for dinner, you go. Because they need to know Jesus. They need to hear the gospel. Well, they're going to serve this thing. It doesn't matter. Eat it. The bigger thing is the gospel going forth.
Yeah.
It's food and meals together are just one really important avenue that the gospel has always gone through.
That's right.
And so we want to do that in such a way that we are not hindering ourselves from those gospel opportunities.
That's right.
Which that verse precedes just a few verses before that, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do.
And Paul doesn't have in mind there like, hey, if you don't like meatloaf, eat meatloaf.
Right.
I mean, he's talking about food sacrifice to idols and all this stuff. But the point is clear. How we handle ourselves with unbelievers around the dinner table says something, makes the gospel seem more attractive or less attractive. You need to bear that in mind. Eat what's put before you. Here's maybe one other thought in this lane. Always strive to have your seats be full at your dinner table. Here's what I mean. And this is great because this can apply to families. It can also equally and maybe even more easily apply to singles or folks with a smaller group of people you're living with. The mealtime has always, for almost every culture, been the place where humanity comes together and does stuff. And gosh, it's like such a great, easy in with so many people to say, hey, why don't you come over tonight? Let's, our family's having dinner. We have a standing dinner at this time on this day. We'd love for you to drop by. What a great opportunity to exhibit hospitality, demonstrate kindness, get great conversations going, and it's not awkward because everybody's got to eat, man. So we just love that. We've always strived to have folks around our table as often as we can, and I think this is part of Rosaria Butterfield's story, even like how she came to faith.
Yep, a lot of people come to faith over dinner tables.
That's right.
It's where ideas are shared. It's disarming to sit across the table from somebody and to share a meal together. It's an intimate thing. And it's an important way that the gospel has made advances in different cultures. And so it's good to, again, my eating is not just about me and what I want and what I prefer. It's uncomfortable, right? All of these things we're talking about push us out of our comfort zone and what is normal and even what is culturally normal, even in Christianity. It's pushing us out of the center of this conversation about food and putting Jesus back in the center of it. And when we do that, things get better. Like that is our experience, is when we've made this shift while it's been uncomfortable, especially in the beginning, and taken a lot of accountability and prayer together. It's like, man, it's just better. Life's better when God is the center of all things, including food. So go eat to the glory of God. I hope you have a great meal today. Ooh. How about that? And enjoy it and let it preach to you the sermon that Jesus is better. Which, how good is Jesus' dinner table going to be in the new heavens and new earth, man? It's going to be amazing.
So good. That's right.
So good.
So good. Hey, thanks for tuning in. That was the food episode. Hope it was helpful for you.
Yeah, and we know that talking about food can bring up a whole lot of insecurities, fears, shame. It can be a really sensitive topic based on a whole host of factors. And we couldn't talk about everything today. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. And there are real situations out there, real medical conditions that require medication, that affect all of these things. We understand that all that is a reality. And we can't talk about all of that. And so we just want to acknowledge that. And we just couldn't cover everything today. We hope that what we did talk about was helpful to you. If you have follow-up questions about anything, if you're listening and going, man, but I'm in a situation that's unique and I want to think about it, or I have questions about it, write to us. We would love to hear from you. question@clearlypodcast.com is where you can send us an email, and we'll do the best that we can to respond to you and connect gospel truth to the situation you're in.
Yeah, that's great. Subscribe to the podcast. What are you doing? Well, I mean, it's been 6 seasons. Why haven't you subscribed? Subscribe, like it, share with a friend, write a review. That'd be amazing. You can join our email list. Just look in the show notes below to find out how to do that. We send email updates. We give you little fun nuggets. It's a fun world out there in
so fun.
Kelly email world. And if you want to support what we're doing to make more of these episodes happen, you can do that at patreon.com/Jimmy and Kelly. Jimmy, Kelly, Needham? I don't even know what it is.
Just go to patreon.com and search our names, Jimmy and Kelly Needham.
That was the worst
and you'll find
pitch
us.
ever. But
We're there.
we love you and are grateful for you. And we will see you next week.